supporting the people that wear the uniform. We believe in holding criminals accountable. The result has been our crime rate is at a 50-year low. You didn't see cities burning down during the BLM riots here. When Hamas tried to take over roads in Orlando and Miami, they were removed in 11 and 13 minutes respectively, including by Florida Highway Patrol in Central Florida. We don't let the inmates run the asylum. We're not going to let people's quality of life be destroyed because we're embracing toxic ideologies and the woke agenda. And we've been very clear on that. You remember back when they were talking about defunding police. Now, we said, of course, we're not going to do that in Florida, although I'll have more on that in a minute. But we also passed legislation preventing local governments from defunding police, because you could have three bozos on some city council vote to fund police, and at that time it was considered fashionable to do. You were celebrated in certain corners, but I'm not going to let those three bozos cut off a city's nose to spite its face. Like, we're going to make sure people are safe. So we did that, and we basically quashed the whole defund the police movement in Florida all the way back in 2020. I mean, it died here and never really got a foothold. We've also done things to make sure that when you do have disorder, that officers are protected. We have the strongest anti-rioting legislation in the country. You can say what you want, you can peacefully demonstrate, but you don't have a right to commandeer other people's property. You do not have a right to block traffic, and you don't have a right to harass people, and you certainly don't have a right to launch attacks at law enforcement. So if you do those things, you will be held accountable in the state of Florida, and that makes a really, really big difference. We saw the difference between Florida and many of these other jurisdictions. I remember I was in Southern California a couple years ago, and I talked to a police chief in like a nice part there, and I'm like, how's it going? He's like, I'm doing great, but just all my police officers now want to move to Florida because they saw the difference in terms of what was going on. So we saw an opportunity to capitalize off that. If Seattle's going to treat their law enforcement personnel poorly, we want people to know we'll treat you good. Chicago, all these other places. But we also wanted to send a message to young people in Florida that this was an honorable profession to pursue, and to be in law enforcement was a good thing. It used to be if there was an opening at a sheriff's department, you'd have like massive numbers of applications, and then that has changed over the years. I think part of it is because law enforcement's been denigrated by legacy media outlets, by activists, and all these other things. And so we said, no, we want to make sure. So we did a bonus program. All recruits, whether transferring from out of state or new recruits in state, are eligible for a $5,000 signing bonus right at the top. So if you're somebody that is just getting kicked in the teeth every day by the climate in Chicago or something, you come down to, say, Fort Myers or Lee County Sheriff's, and all of a sudden you get a $5,000 bonus immediately, and then you get to work in a community that actually appreciates what you do. This $5,000 bonus also applies to state law enforcement, so you can do Highway Patrol, you can do Florida Department of Law Enforcement as well. We also, during the COVID, they're sending all this money they printed trillions of dollars sending this money. They sent a bunch of money to the states. We got less because we had low unemployment. California and New York got more comparatively. But a lot of this money, I would have rather them just keep it and pay down the debt. Turns out, if you sent it back to them, then the Treasury Secretary at the time, Janet Yellen, was empowered to transfer it to different states. So if I would have rejected some of the money, it just would have gone to California or would have gone to New York. And so I did. So I was like, okay, let's figure out what we're going to do. So we did 3 years in a row a bonus program. All sworn law enforcement, firefighters, and EMT got $1,000 after-tax bonuses 3 years in a row. Now, $1,000 doesn't pay for as much as it used to in an era of inflation, but I think when people got the check in the mail, like, well, heck, the state of Florida actually appreciates what I do. And so that was a small token, and we were happy to be able to work and get that through. So we've done a lot. We've done law enforcement scholarships, and it's been really, really good. But we're now in this situation where we have a very successful track record in Florida about how we've approached a whole host of these issues. Obviously, if you look at why people have moved here, and I'm not asking anyone to move because we've got a lot of people and we've got a lot of issues we got to deal with. Trust me, we're putting money into infrastructure in Southwest Florida, and we're moving projects ahead of schedule, but it's tough. It isn't easy. So there's a lot of challenges with that. But the reality is it's a free country and people vote with their feet. And if you talk to people who've been moving here recently, but particularly kind of post the BLM summer and the defund the police stuff, a lot of people would say public safety. They wanted to be in a state that really put a premium on public safety. So we were right about how we approached that. If you look at what we've done on things like fighting the woke and defending parents' rights in education, this has been something that's been really, really important to a lot of parents. I mean, I've got young kids. You don't want your kids showing up at first grade and being indoctrinated and being told that they can change their gender. That's inappropriate, and we had to fight a lot of people, including a big company in Central Florida, some of you may have heard of before, in order to do that. But it was the right thing to do. We also said our colleges and universities are not going to be indoctrination centers, that they should be educating. We want a classical approach to higher education. We don't want the imposition of ideology like at Columbia University and Harvard and all these places. We want to really teach people to think for themselves, to pursue truth, and ultimately to be good citizens of this republic in years. So we've had to do a lot to overhaul that. We eliminated DE&I. We were the first state to do that. We have all tenured professors now have to undergo review every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. We even allow university presidents and trustees to hire faculty directly from other universities without allowing the existing faculty to veto those people, because if you don't toe the ideological line, a lot of the existing faculty, will not want you there. So we've made huge strides in that and many other things. And a lot of people, obviously, if you look at the electoral track record, it's been very successful. When I became governor, this was considered a purple state. One-point races were kind of the norm statewide. We had more Democrats than Republicans by hundreds of thousands, and we had a Republican majority in both the House and Senate in Florida, but we didn't have supermajorities. Now, we've got 1.2 million more Republicans than Democrats. We have the biggest supermajorities we've ever had in the entire history of the Republican Party. And the reason why you got that is because people responded to the leadership that we've provided. They've responded to the results. They've responded to the policies in a very, very good way. And so I obviously, ran for election in 22 on the record. We got a resounding victory. A lot of people ran in the House and Senate on the same record. But what's going on in Tallahassee right now with the Florida House of Representatives is really treacherous, what they're doing, because they all ran on this agenda. They never ran against law enforcement. I can tell you that, because they would have shown the door by the voters if they had done that. They never ran on trying to overturn our reforms in higher education. They never ran on joining with Democrats to try to manufacture smears against the administration, the governor, even the first lady. They've tried, to do that on. They never ran on any of that stuff. But that's what they're doing. They are not doing what they told you they would do. They are effectively stabbing the voters in the back with this really, really terrible agenda. And the agenda seems to be two things. One, rain down as much benefits by twisting and contorting and changing Florida law to liberal trial lawyers so that they get more money and everybody else has to pay for that. That's a pure special interest play. There's nobody around the state are not begging to have more ability for trial lawyers to bring more frivolous lawsuits or to have more jackpot justice. Nobody is asking for that, but yet that's a huge component to the House's agenda. And this is a Republican House, supposedly, and so they're doing that. The other part of their agenda seems to be doing everything they can to overturn what we've done over the last 6 years. And I've said this before, if they ran for election on that agenda and you all sent them to Tallahassee on that agenda, I may not like it, but you know what? That's just the way the cookie crumbles. But that's not what they told you they would do. And I'm confident if they told you that they were going to reverse the success of the past 6 years, they would not have been nominated for office and they would not have been elected for office. And this is being driven by the leadership in the House, by some of the entrenched staff. This is the swamp in action. This is the swamp trying to strike back after 6 years of success, after Florida being the model state that so many people have sought to emulate, not just moving here. We will take cadres of people will come and visit Florida. We have people that are mimicking Hope Florida in different states across the country. You know, these House members, a lot of them, they make fools of themselves. They don't even know what the program does. It's clear they don't know what they're talking about. And yet, how come someone from Iowa knows and is now implementing that there? We have people that come to talk about and try to mimic our reforms in education, K-12 and higher education. They're trying to undo that. So the results speak for themselves. They're trying to, and I mentioned this yesterday, they actually have a bill in the Florida legislature that will serve the purpose of undoing the conservative reforms that we've instituted in higher education. They want the universities to be able to pursue a leftist indoctrination agenda. And they actually cut the governor out of the process because they know that I am your voice of the millions of Floridians who sent me here to be able to ensure that these institutions reflect your values and the best interests of the state. They want to cut that out. They want to reverse course. That was not anything they campaigned on. It's not something that they can justify in any meaningful way. They can try to give you talking points, but they can't do it. And I'm just thinking to myself, like seeing some of this agenda, they actually tried to push through, maybe it's dead, this carbon sequestration. That's part of Biden's Green New Deal. I don't want Biden's Green New Deal in Florida, especially when you have almost a 3-to-1 Republican advantage in the Florida legislature. But I think what it's showing is these party labels, when you have one party that dominates like we have under my tenure, the party label means a little less because people who don't share the values know taking on that label is their pathway to power. And so they'll take on the label, chief power, and then they actually try to overturn the agenda that got them there in the first place. And that's what's going on, which brings us to today. No state was stronger against defunding the police and standing up for the men and women who wear the uniform than the state of Florida. And that has been true under every single Speaker of the House I dealt with my first 6 years, under every Senate president I dealt with over my first years. And honestly, it also includes the current Senate president, President Albritton, who's been very supportive of law enforcement. And yet, you have the House is pursuing this budget that is reversing all the momentum we have when it comes to supporting our state law enforcement. So this budget, we know it's harder to recruit troopers because we need to increase the trooper pay. And I've proposed to do that. We have done that, but we got to do more. Their budget defunds the raises that we had set for law enforcement officers in the state of Florida. Their budget cuts 84 current state trooper positions, which, oh, by the way, I don't think the workload is going down in Florida. You got a lot of people, and in fact, it's definitely going up because of my immigration reforms that have required state and local to assist with immigration enforcement and deportation efforts. The Florida Highway Patrol is part of this federal 287G program, where they're actively working with the federal government to identify illegal aliens and get them out. And so why are you cutting positions? They even defund the ballistic armor that the Florida Highway Patrol needs to be able to do their job effectively. So you want to talk about a Republican supermajority? This is a donkey in an elephant suit when they're going after law enforcement. This is not what they campaigned on when they sought your vote. You elected this House under false pretenses. They didn't tell you that they were going to throw away their principles and just follow whatever the leadership told them to do. But that's exactly what they're doing with this budget. And I just think it's disgraceful that they're targeting Highway Patrol and law enforcement the way they are. They bat their chest. They say they're for it. And then that's why I always say, talk in this business, talk is cheap. Anyone can tell you anything. Show me your deeds. Show me what you're actually doing. Our record in Florida of standing up for law enforcement is second to none. We have done it time and time again. We are continuing to do it. And honestly, Republican legislators have stood with us time and time again, all the way up until this current session in the Florida House of Representatives. Something is rotten over there. This is not what they were elected to do, but they are choosing to take the trust you placed in them and sabotage the best interests of your community and the state. And I just thought you ought to know about that. I think you ought to know, because I know most people probably aren't following what's in the House's budget, what they're actually trying to accomplish with this stuff. I haven't really figured out what they're trying to. I mean, they obviously want to help personal injury lawyers get rich. I know that because they've put a lot of bills up to try to do that, which, by the way, are dead on arrival anyway. So go ahead and do it. Make my day. So you have that. You also have them trying to sabotage everything we've done, trying to join with Democrats to, attack me, attack the administration, just manufacturing crap to try to distract from their failures. So you have that. But I don't really know, what are they doing to cut property taxes, as I've called for? Nothing. They are refusing in the Florida House of Representatives to do any property tax relief. They actually want to cut taxes for tourists and visitors and foreigners. I want to do that. I want to reduce your property taxes as Floridians. I'd rather the tourists pay more taxes. Why are we giving them a break on anything? I don't think that's going anywhere either, but that's what they're doing. So it's not a good agenda. Actually, one of the bills they had, I mentioned this yesterday, we really led the nation and dragged this country out of the COVID lockdowns. If it wasn't for the free state of Florida, we would have been mired in years and years of really bad stuff, especially once Biden got in. And I had to fight that fight very lonely for much of the time. I didn't really have a lot of folks backing me up. I got attacked a lot, but that just goes with the territory. But one guy I had that was willing to stand up and fight was Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo. And Dr. Ladapo has basically been willing to stand up for evidence-based medicine. So if the medical establishment is telling you that your newborn baby needs to get an mRNA COVID shot, Surgeon General is willing to look at the data and then tell you the truth, that no, your newborn baby does not need to get an mRNA COVID shot. And some people don't like that he's willing to stand up and say the truth, but that's what he's been willing to do. They actually have a piece of legislation in the Florida House of Representatives that would have the effect of firing Dr. Ladapo from his position. Basically in Florida, he works at University of Florida. He does a lot of other things, but I've said I don't want all the agencies cloistered in Tallahassee. I would rather have people that are out in the actual state and not in this little bubble, this little political bubble. So I think it's good. So Ladapo, our Secretary of the Florida Department of Transportation, Jared Perdue, would potentially be forced out over this. Remember, he was the one that helped me rebuild the Pine Island Bridge in 3 days, rebuild the Sanibel Causeway in 2 weeks. If you had California emergency response, you think those bridges would have been built yet? No, it would have taken years to be able to do it. So, but he lives in Central Florida because that makes sense where a lot of the projects are taking place. It's easier for him to get here, Northeast Florida, from that place. You got to ask yourself, what is motivating this? Why are you doing this ridiculous nonsense? It's all a charade. It's really a pathetic agenda. So I know that the Florida senators do not agree with what the House is doing. I know that obviously my administration does not agree with the House is doing. But you guys just need to know that this is what's going on up there. And I think these guys, the fix is this. They think that the leadership thinks they can jam through whatever they want, regardless of what the voters want, and that come election time, they can raise enough money from special interests to be able to send you mailers, text messages, and run advertising to basically lie to you and tell you that these members actually stood for the conservative values that they ran on. And that's their bet. That's their bet, that they can get away with it because come election time, you're not going to be following. You're going to get a nice shiny mailer saying, you know, John Q. representative is the most conservative thing since sliced bread, and they stood with the governor. They're doing this, Florida first. And they think that you're going to just believe that without actually evaluating the conduct. And so I don't think that that's good. I also don't think it makes sense. I mean, we have a very successful model in Florida. We leaned in on the tough issues. We were leading on all this stuff, fighting the woke, first ones out of the gate, fighting the COVID hysteria, first ones out of the gate. All these things that we did were not even popular at the time. They were the right things to do, but people responded because they saw the leadership and they saw we were doing it for the right reason. And they responded overwhelmingly with very strong electoral performances. They did not have a supermajority before I was governor. We got that after the 2022 election, and we got it because we were running on a bold agenda. But more importantly than running on the bold agenda, it's converting on the agenda once you get into office and actually doing what you said you were going to do. If you just run unapologetically on a certain agenda, you get in and you implement it. Even people that disagree with you, they will respect the fact that, hey, this is what he said he was going to do, and that's what they're doing. What I think voters really don't like is when they run on one agenda, they get in, and not only do they not convert on it, but actively try to undermine or sabotage that agenda. This is a sabotaging of Florida's law and order reputation. This is a sabotaging of the people that are wearing the uniform, that are risking lives. You see the Tren de Agua gang members. Who do you think's helping nab these guys? Highway Patrol is. They see them. FDLE is doing it. So these guys are working hard. They're putting their lives on the line, and they deserve our support. They have my support. I'm pretty confident they have the support of the Florida Senate. But what the Florida House of Representatives done is just wrong, and you all ought to know about that. All right, we're going to hear from some folks that may have something to say about it. So first, we're going to hear from Amanda Gerhardt.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Gerhardt. I would like to thank Governor DeSantis for joining us today and for fighting for our brave men and women in law enforcement. In 2020, my fiancé, Zachary Fink, proudly became a state trooper with the Florida Highway Patrol. He worked in Troop D, Brevard County, for 2 years before transferring home to Troop L, St. Lucie County, where he was assigned the night shift. In the early morning hours of February 2nd, 2024, I received a notification that someone was at the front door. I hurried out of bed and rushed to the door, and when I opened it, I saw 2 troopers standing there. I always asked Zach, how would I know if something were to happen to him? He said, you would know. There would be 2 troopers standing at your door. I will never forget the look on their faces. I knew what they were going to say next. That my Zach was in a very serious crash and was killed in the line of duty, protecting our community, trying to apprehend a fleeing felon. In an instant, my whole world fell apart. Over the last year, I have worked so hard at healing my heart and soul from the loss of Zach. I have made a lot of progress. So much progress that when Director Kerner discussed with me the opportunity to put my efforts into bettering the lives of state troopers and their families, I was ready to try to make some good happen from the devastating loss I experienced. Today, I am here to tell the people of Florida that I am ashamed at the actions of the Florida House of Representatives. I cannot understand, and no one can explain to me why, in the great state of Florida, the Florida House of Representatives is defunding the police. Why are they trying to cut 137 state trooper positions? Why is the House of Representatives cutting funding for ballistic protection for our troopers? They even cut funding to replace patrol cars that have over 100,000 miles. All of this puts troopers in real danger at a time when we should be doing everything we can to support our law enforcement. I was not expecting to be received as a hero when I went to the Florida Capitol. However, I also did not expect state representatives to refuse to meet with me, tell me that they are busy, and to call back after session is over. And I certainly did not expect to see efforts to undermine and hurt our law enforcement officers. Despite the obstacles that are put up against our brave men and women by the Florida House of Representatives, I am deeply committed to making sure elected officials do not succeed in defunding the police, while at the same time campaign on being supporters of law enforcement officers and their families. I would like to say thank you to Senate President Ben Albritton, who I had an opportunity to meet with. President Albritton and his fellow senators really have stepped up to the plate and made meaningful progress for our state troopers. And to Governor DeSantis, Director Kerner, and Colonel House, thank you for everything you've done to fight for our state troopers. Even though the Florida House of Representatives are trying to undermine our success, your commitment and dedication to our brave law enforcement officers and their families is deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, Kat?
Good morning. I hope that you'll extend me a bit of grace, as this is not something I do often or ever. And if you can't see me, well, sorry, I'm short, and they didn't give me a step stool, so here we go. Good morning, and thank you, Amanda, for your dedication in the face of such painful loss to bettering the lives of our state troopers and their families. I join you, Governor DeSantis, and Director Kerner in this honorable mission we have before us. My name is Kathleen, or Kat Turner, and I am the proud wife of Stephen Turner and mom to our son, Noah. Stephen has been a state trooper since 2019 and recently received both the 2023 National Trooper of the Year Award and the 2024 Florida Highway Patrol Trooper of the Year Award. It was truly an honor to receive such accolades, but unfortunately neither has come without a reason or a cost. On February 4th, 2023, when I was 17 weeks pregnant with our son, I received an iPhone alert at 3:46 in the morning that my husband, who was out on the midnight shift at the time, was in a traffic crash. I jolted awake and immediately knew something was wrong. I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't get in touch with him. Eventually, I was told that Stephen had been flown to a hospital in Tampa as a result of an accident. At this point, I still thought he'd been in a crash. A trooper picked me up and rushed me to the hospital, where I was able to tell Stephen that I loved him before he was taken into emergency surgery, but I honestly didn't know if he was going to be making it through. I didn't know if I was saying goodbye for good. I was then told, I was kind of pulled to the side and told that Stephen had been in a pursuit and performed a pit maneuver to stop the suspects. They then fled on foot, and Stephen did exactly what he was trained to do. He attempted to apprehend one of the suspects. Unfortunately, that man decided that my husband's life did not matter, and he decided to pull a gun on him and shoot Stephen point blank in the abdomen. Now, somehow, by the grace of God, and we thank him every single day, Stephen survived, so good job, honey. Proud of you. Thank you. He began his long recovery process, which we are still working through today. But in spite of all he went through, there was no question that we were fully committed to him returning to full duty someday. He could have easily gone to a different department or agency. He could have made more money. He could have maybe even had a safer job. But we both take so much pride in his role as a state trooper that there was no question. Regardless of the fact that troopers are paid so little, and we were also about to start a family. So just like Amanda, I jumped at the chance to advocate for our state troopers because of how supportive our Highway Patrol family has been to us the past 2 years. However, I have watched Director Kerner fight and fight and fight, only to be met with resistance every single time he has spoken on behalf of this agency. I was beyond excited to go to Tallahassee and was hopeful that our perspectives and stories would be appreciated and valued, that our legislators of the great state of Florida just did not know how poorly our troopers were treated, and that once they knew, they would fix it. Makes sense. Every elected official I've met has claimed they are in full support of law enforcement, so why would I think differently? I finally did make it to Tallahassee and can honestly say I was horrified by what the Florida House of Representatives has done to state troopers. Cutting state trooper positions as if we have enough. Cutting funds to replace old cars. I'm sorry, do they not need safe vehicles to drive every shift? Defunding ballistic armor, bulletproof vests, the thing that they need because people are shooting at them and don't care about their lives. I cannot begin to tell you how surreal it is to be the wife of a state trooper who nearly died after being shot while protecting the citizens of this state and be told that the House of Representatives cut funding to protect him. It is one thing if the House doesn't care that our troopers' starting salary is 48th out of 49 in the nation. Hawaii doesn't have a state highway patrol. And with no career development plan in place to help them prepare for the future. Unfortunately, we've become accustomed to, the lack of support when it comes to law enforcement pay. But it is another thing entirely when you defund life-saving equipment for these troopers. Imagine almost losing your husband to a gunshot wound and then being looked in the eye and being told one thing and then seeing the House of Representatives cut funding for ballistic protection. I just want you to let that sink in for a moment, because I see those scars every single day. I see what he went through. I watch it as we go to doctor's appointments still 2 years later because he hasn't fully healed. Governor DeSantis, Director Kerner, Colonel Howes, and Lieutenant Colonel Harrison are incredible state and law enforcement leaders, and they know we have their back 100%. It has been the honor of my life to join them on this mission to protect and support the Florida Highway Patrol, and now it is time to end the blatant disrespect our state troopers and families have received from these elected officials. Amanda and I are just two voices, but I think we speak on behalf of every state trooper and their families when we say we are fed up and ready for this wrong to be made right. I would like to thank First Lady Casey DeSantis, President Albritton, Senator Collins, Senator Hooper, and so many others who were kind enough to meet with us, listen to our stories, and encourage us to continue fighting. Your sincere compassion and commitment to a budget that truly honors our state troopers and their families means more than you will ever know. And now it is time for the House of Representatives to be held responsible for saying one thing and doing another. It is time for them to follow through on approving the Florida Highway Patrol budget to not only compensate our troopers for the incredibly hard work they do every single day, but also to provide the necessary tools to do their job well and keep them safe. Because they are not just a number on a paper or a board or a spreadsheet. They are people and they matter. So I trust and believe that they will do the right thing for these men and women who are deserving of this and so much more. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. I'm going to bring up Dave Kerner in a second, but just to kind of put a little bit of a bow on this. So, the House, they may say, oh, well, we got to reduce spending. We're spending too much. First of all, your state, since I've been governor, we've quadrupled the state's rainy day fund. If you look at all the debt we've had in 180 years of our entire history, we've retired 41% of it just since I've been governor. We have the lowest number of state employees per capita in the entire country and the lowest per capita debt per capita in the entire country. And so we were Doge before Doge was cool. We've been doing this as a matter of course. It isn't like we're spending willy-nilly here. But so the whole premise, if that's what they're going to tell you, is just false. But we can also look at their actions. So this is what they want to do: defund ballistic protection, all this stuff for highway patrol. But what have they done this year in the Florida House of Representatives? They've actually voted to undo $60 million in cost savings that I instituted in the budget last June, including $56 million for themselves in the legislature. So this is stuff that had already been decided in current year budget. We're almost done with the fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And they're not focusing on cutting your property taxes. They're not focusing on ending the condo crisis. But they are voting to undo spending reductions that I made through the line item veto last June and add, this is pork that they voted to add into the budget. So this idea that they're fiscally conservative is a joke, because if you were fiscally conservative, you would have applauded me for instituting those cost savings. You wouldn't have gone and tried to undo the cost savings, and that's exactly what they have done. Dave.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Dave Kerner. I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director of the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. And, of course, I get to work with the Florida Highway Patrol, and there's really not much more for me to add after following two passionate, persuasive, and focused young women who have experienced tremendous loss and injury in the case of Trooper Turner. They spoke directly to you. There's nothing that I could add to that that is more compelling. I also followed my boss, the governor, who has, of course, over the last 6 years, made the most compelling case about the importance of strong executive leadership and effective leadership. But I did want to take this opportunity just to kind of give a little bit of context as to what my role is in this process and why we have these items listed here, and just give, for a minute or two, a little bit of color. First of all, thank you, Governor, for your leadership. There has never been a time in my 2 years as the executive director that I've gone to the governor and said, we need X, Y, or Z, and he hasn't had the back of our state troopers. These men and women in uniform, they served in Texas, they served on the border, they engage in just incredible amount of very dangerous duties that they have on a daily basis. And my public career and my public service started just like Amanda and Kat's. I started as a law enforcement officer at the age of 19, but really, I always say I started my public service as a family member, the son of a police officer. And so the wives and husbands and children in law enforcement serve right there with these men and women in uniform, and they face the dangers and risks that their husbands and wives are exposed to. So if we could just give these troopers and these public servants here a round of applause for their service. What's unique about my relationship with Kat and Amanda is the way that we met. About 2 years ago, I received a call from the colonel of the highway patrol that a trooper had been shot. It was Kat's husband. I rushed to the hospital in Tampa. We met in the hospital as her husband went into surgery. Almost a year later to the date, on February 2nd, 2024, I received a call from the colonel of the Florida Highway Patrol late at night that there was a very bad situation. Colonel House and I rushed to the hospital in St. Lucie County, and I met Amanda Gerhart, having just lost her fiance and the love of her life. And we had an opportunity to see Zachary Fink before he left for the medical examiner's office. He had passed away, and that was the first time that I met Amanda. And so these are some of the duties that come with running a large law enforcement agency, and I've watched these two women heal and grow, and there came a point in time where they expressed interest in serving the state of Florida and these troopers by advocating for what is needed for this agency. And I told them that it wouldn't be easy. I didn't think it would be this hard, but they came to Tallahassee just on the heels of a Senate budget that was very productive and very dignified. It provided 15% raises for state troopers that have been here for 5 years or more. It funded everything on this list and more. We could not have asked for a better show of support for state troopers, but it just so happens to be that the day that they got there, I had to sit down with Amanda and Kat and say, I've got some bad news for you. The Florida House of Representatives budget proposal defunds ballistic armor. It defunds vehicles over 100,000 miles. I mean, that's a weird number, but the state of Florida says that troopers should not be driving vehicles with 80,000 miles or more. Their husbands were in pursuits when this happened. This is very dangerous driving. More than half of our vehicles have over 80,000 miles. So we asked, can we at least repair the ones with 100,000 miles or replace them? That was defunded. The Senate supported it. They cut the raises across the board, not one penny more for state troopers. Florida's growing, a lot of success, as the governor has pointed out. We're not asking people to move here, but there's a lot more people here now than there was in 2017, 2018. And the budget called for 73 positions to be cut, state troopers. And also our Florida dispatchers. Those are the lifeline to our troopers. And so had to break that news to them. It was a very, very challenging conversation. And then the experience that they had in the House of Representatives, I mean, the representative didn't want to meet with them, wouldn't meet with them. The conversations that they had basically focused on, well, we support law enforcement. Well, then why are you doing this? And there's questions that we can't get answers to. And so I thought it was important that they have this platform with the governor, who is the most pro-law enforcement governor in the history of the state of Florida and the nation. as an administrator and as a leader, you know, these are just numbers on a piece of paper, 73 law enforcement officers cut. But to me, when the colonel and the lieutenant colonel and I get into a room and ask the legislature for things, we have to do it from an officer safety perspective. And I want you to understand two important data points. In 2020, the average length of service for a state trooper at the Florida Highway Patrol was 9.8 years. And today, the average length of service is 6.8 years. And so in just a couple of years, that amount of experience of the trooper on the road, the men and women behind me, has gone down almost 40%. As a leader and as administrator, law enforcement officers understand that we send new troopers out into the road. We need experienced troopers out there to train them. And so when we cut law enforcement positions, and the reason why they're being cut, they'll tell you, is because they're vacant. The other piece of information that you need to know is that the last thing we want to do is send new troopers out onto the road with other troopers that have less experience. But the reason why we have vacancies is because troopers aren't paid enough. They start, and the governor has fought year after year and made progress, but the reality is this budget will keep the Florida Highway Patrol as the second lowest starting pay in the nation out of 49 states. That's not acceptable. The governor knows that's not acceptable. That's why he submitted that budget. The Senate knows that, and that's why they supported the governor's budget request. And so things have to change, because my phone rings a lot at night from the colonel of the Florida Highway Patrol, and it is never good news. And so I thank you for telling your stories. I thank you for sharing your pain. My heart breaks for you, for both of you. But Amanda, to lose the love of your life and then have to come to Tallahassee and be treated the way that you've been treated, which is a whole other story that we're not going to talk about today.
I may say something about it.
He's the boss. But I promise you this, in addition to the governor, these two ladies have committed to this. This is not just one press conference or one visit to Tallahassee. I have a feeling that if things continue down the path that we're going, you're going to be seeing Amanda and Kat much more often. And we thank you for that. But by the way, there's also about 2,000 other husbands and wives and families that I have to go to sleep at night and think about, that these women can speak on behalf, and we may hear from more of these husbands and wives and children in the future. And so we look forward to continuing the conversation, but as a leader and as an administrator and somebody that has been inspired by the service of Governor DeSantis, we're going to be bulldogs, and we're not going to back down from a fight. We don't ask these men and women to back down from a fight, and we're not going to back down from a fight. I want to thank Senator Albritton, President Albritton, Senator Hooper, Senator Collins. It's been a joy and a pleasure to work with them. I want to thank the First Lady for meeting with them. The first time Amanda told her story about her loss publicly just happened to be to the First Lady of the great state of Florida, and there were a lot of tears, but we thank her for being so compassionate. And my heart, the Florida Highway Patrol is behind you the same way you're behind us, and we thank you with all our hearts. Thank you.
You know, look, I think there can be things that, you know, these sometimes little things get blown out of proportion, but I do think it's telling that you have two, you know, one who lost her fiance, another whose husband got shot, and they want to meet with legislators, and these senators are meeting with them, but the House members told them to go fly a kite. Why is that? Yeah, it's reflected in this, right? I think they told them to go fly a kite because they couldn't defend this. That's why I think they told them to go fly a kite. They didn't want to have to look them in the eye and tell them that this is what they were planning on doing. That's just my judgment in terms of how you're doing it. And so I think it's a little thing that I think speaks volumes about really the misplaced priorities that this Florida House of Representatives. I wish this were the only issue, because if this were the only issue, we figure it out and that'll be good. But it's on issue after issue that the things that you voted for are not being respected and are not being honored, and that's just wrong. Okay, do we got any questions? Yes, ma'am.
There seems to be a clear divide between you and the Florida legislature, at least the Florida House, that only seems to be growing. Is there a solution here so that you can actually work to get stuff done, or is this kind of the
Well, I think if you look at what was said, I mean, the leader of the Florida Senate, the senators are working constructively with these family members and with our administration. I do think the Florida House is embarking on really unprecedented exhibit of self-sabotage. They are the least productive Florida House of Representatives that we have had in the modern history of the Florida Republican Party. Certainly since I've been here, not even close, not even within the same ballpark of the other House of Representatives that we've had. Of course, those were under different speakers, Oliva, Sprouse, and Renner, for the first 6 years. So the divide is not as much between me and the Florida House of Representatives leadership. There is a divide, but it's the divide that the Florida House of Representatives of leadership is doing to their own voters. When they're attacking me, people say, oh, they're fighting the governor. Well, yeah, but they're really fighting you. They're really fighting the people that elected them because they're not honoring the agenda that they ran on. And I think you have, I said this yesterday, most of these rank and file members, so probably some of the folks down here in Southwest Florida, I've known a lot of these guys, we've worked well. The leadership tells them they have to do certain things, and if they don't do it, they lose a committee assignment, they get their bills pulled, they don't get appropriation. So it's a retribution that is done, and they kind of hold that hammer. You have these staff members that order these people around, and so I think a lot of them say, well, I kind of have to vote this way, otherwise I'm going to get penalized, and that may be true, but that's not leadership. Leadership means you got to dig in and do what's right. If you say you're for law enforcement and you're a rank and file House member, you need to come out and say this is wrong, that what they're doing is wrong. You got to be willing to do that. Is there going to be retribution to you? Yeah, there probably will be. But you know what? If I had taken that position back when I was getting hit during COVID or fighting Disney, I can't take any incoming. I got to do what's safe. This state would not be where it is today. And so leadership requires you to stand up and be counted. So in all these things, I'm always mindful. And that's why people say, oh, well, you're not getting a lot. No, it's not personal. It's business. And my business is to deliver on the mandate that I got from voters to pursue a very bold Florida First agenda. And everything I told people I would do, I've done. You didn't elect me under one pretense and I did other. I did what I said. Even my critics would acknowledge I've done what I said, and I continue to do that. I think they are effectively rebelling against the voters that sent them here. And that just doesn't work. It's not sustainable to have a model like that. So I think that we need to continue with the success that we've had. The leadership in the Florida House, they're the ones who are trying to deviate from the Florida First model that has proven not only successful here, we have these other states come and try to mimic our policies. I mean, heck, the Trump administration, there's a headline in the Wall Street Journal last month, Trump administration accountability for higher education. You want to know what that looks like? Look at Florida. Florida did it first. And they talked about all the things that we've done. The House is actually trying to undo what we've already done and what is now being replicated or attempted to be by the Trump administration. So we've led on these things. You got to build off that success. Do not tear down the success. And I do think there's a difference. I have not seen the same attitude or performance trying to reverse out of the Senate. I've seen that out of the House. I think the Senate has continued to try to put points on the board, and that's what it's all about.
Governor, you mentioned motivation. What do you think the motivation is? And perhaps you may have just answered that. Are there any of those House of Representative members here in Florida? And do you expect some vetoes when you have to start signing?
Oh, well, there's always vetoes. I mean, that's for sure. But look, if they are doing the bidding of the liberal plaintiffs bar trying to rain down benefits on these lawyers, even though that's going to cause people's costs to go up, it's going to be bad for business, bad for the economy, that is going to get met with a veto. That's for sure. if they are doing things that are not in keeping with what we promise voters, that will be met with a veto. I will tell you, though, and so yes, there will be, but I also think that their agenda has been so far outside what the voters that send them there expect that I think most of it's dead on arrival in the Florida Senate. I don't think a lot of this stuff's even going to end up reaching my desk. I think this was a gross miscalculation. I think it was an inappropriate use of having an opportunity to pursue a very good agenda. I mean, and this was pointed out yesterday, you know, we have the biggest Republican supermajority in the history of the state. Are they producing things that are causing you to be like, yeah, go get them, attaboy? No, they're not producing anything that's been significant. And so, you know, you look at that and you just kind of scratch your head and say, why? And again, I don't think that that is something that rank and file members, you should talk to your state representatives. Call your representative in the Florida House and say, what's going on with your agenda? Don't let them feed you talking points. You know, get the real scoop. But I think the real scoop is rank and file members, they face retribution. And, you know, this is why I think you're going to end up probably seeing a Freedom Caucus develop in the Florida House of Representatives, because it's just untenable to have a situation where leadership is walking these folks off a plank and making them be at constant war with their own voters. It just doesn't work that way. So will there be vetoes on some of the legislation? Of course, there always is to a certain extent. And sometimes the legislature's not happy with me, but, you know, sometimes I will put the reasons and I'll have some of the folks come to me and say, you know what, you make a good point. Maybe we'll work on it a little bit different way next year. So that even that can be a collaborative process. But I think some of the stuff's going to run aground in the Senate. I don't think, like this higher ed, to try to kneecap our ability to hold higher ed accountable, I don't think that's going to get on the desk. If it does, we'll invite you all to the ceremony. We'll veto it. That's fine. But I don't even think it's going to get there. No, because it's a private charity. It is not the government. This is why I think, first of all, the whole thing that the House leadership's doing is a manufactured fraud. This is a hoax. They are trying to smear one of the most successful programs anywhere in the country, which is our government policy. It's not an associated charity. It's our government policy that has gotten 30,000 people off of welfare and saved $100 million. But more important than that, it's actually given people hope. It's given them meaning. It's put them on their feet, and people know who are in need that there's actually people in the community that care about you. And it may be the church, it may be a charity, it may be some of these other things, but that's the name of the game. So that's what this is. And a lot of these members, they didn't seem to even know that Hope Florida was the state policy, and that Hope Florida was not necessarily this direct support organization, which has supplemented the mission. And it's given grants to charities. It's given grants to Hope Navigators. There have been different things that has been done, which has been helpful and continue. But that is not the Hope Florida program. It is not operated by the government. It's a private group. And so, you know, they can talk about, you know, how they did all that. But I could just tell you this. Hope Florida has changed lives for the better. Hope Florida, because of the First Lady's vision and leadership, has made a real difference in our communities. And there's some people that are threatened by that. There's some people that don't like that. Maybe it's because it conflicts with their vision of government first. Maybe they just don't like seeing other people have success in the political sphere. Maybe they have their own agenda or their own axe to grind. But I can tell you the program has been fantastic. The DSO has provided support for anti-drug efforts, grants to charitable organizations, as well as bonuses to our Hope Navigators, which has made a difference in the lives of the navigators who are working hard to kind of come to terms with a new approach, which I think is exciting for most, but it's also different than what they had been doing before. So, you know, for some of these Republican leaders to be joining with liberal Democrats and liberal media to manufacture smears against Hope Florida, against me, against the First Lady, it just shows you they are not on your team. they are not doing what they said that they would do. So I thought the whole thing yesterday was a total flop. I think that these are people that are just desperate for any type of attention that they can get, but they're not doing the people's business. And I can tell you there's nothing coming out of the Florida House of Representatives that is going to rival the success that Hope Florida has had in any way, shape, or form. All right, thanks, guys. We'll see ya. Thanks, guys. Oh, good to see you. Welcome back. How you doing? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.